So, Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, you were just telling me that you have finally picked that up.
I did, yes. I picked up the copy you sent me, plugged it into my 2DS, and have spent, maybe an hour with it. I'm technically not even at a save point.
Except that you can just close the... Oh, you can't.
Yes.
You have a 2DS,
No,
right?
I can. I can close the 2DS, and it'll just hold in that spot forever.
Wait, but the 2DS doesn't close, does it?
Yes, it does. The one I have does.
Wait, really? I thought the 2DS was a flat, single...
Well, there's a version that's a flat, simple, ugly-looking thing that I wouldn't touch for nobody's money.
Right.
And then there's the one I have, which is a clamshell. It's the 2DS XL, I guess? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Is it the one that looks like Pikachu on the outside?
No, mine is not the one that looks like Pikachu on the outside.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Mine's the one that looks like a creamsicle, an orange creamsicle on the outside.
So it's orange.
Orange trim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of ice cream man was coming around your neighborhood that sold you like creamsicles with orange trim?
I don't know, but he kept asking for our photographs, so I'm not really sure.
Good night, everybody.
You think that's a joke? He actually did that.
This took a dark turn fast.
Our neighborhood was a safe neighborhood. Anyway, I played about an hour's worth of it because, as I was explaining to you, I find the Overworld map to be very hard to read or to see clearly. And last night I was really, for whatever reason, my eyes were really tired and worn out from looking at screens and trying to avoid hammering sounds. And so I basically had to stop. So I'm not even at a save point yet. I am still technically in the fair. Mm-hmm. Though I have not been so foolish as to step on a teleporter.
Right.
At least not yet.
Absolutely don't do that.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. I can tell already that's a bad idea.
But your friend Luca, she's probably worked out all the bugs.
Well, you know what? That's great. Too bad. And it is terrible. That is exactly what they say.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And I went into a tent with a bunch of monsters in it and tried to punch my way through, but I don't have those kind of reflexes anymore. I am just not fast enough to deal with all of them.
Filled with monsters?
Yeah, there's a tent, where they run the race, right? Okay.
Yeah, they have the race.
And you make like 4 bets and then win those, and then you have enough money to go, or enough coin or whatever the thing is. Silver or something?
Right.
I don't know.
Norstein Beckler's Tent of Horrors.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
the Tent of
there's
Horrors.
like 3 different mini games in there you can play.
Right. One of them is punching monsters till they go back into a hole, but I can't. I don't maneuver that fast anymore. So that was a loss. I also can only drink up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What is it? 8?
Yeah, I think 8 total sodas.
Yeah, 8 total sodas. I can get 7. I can't get the 8th one.
Did you find any stray cats?
There's a number of stray cats everywhere.
Mm-hmm. But
I have interacted with a number of them.
Mm-hmm.
They go meow. One ran away.
Was anyone looking for their cat?
They were.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no idea where the cat ran away to. So I have been unable to resolve that obvious and simple quest.
Right. See, this is the funny thing, though. Those trivial little things that happen at the fair actually come back in a surprising way.
Oh, good.
It starts off silly. It starts off very, very like cheesy story.
Right.
And it is one of those things that has both the tone and the scope of the story evolve in a very well done way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Let's see. I beat up a robot, and then I punched the bell until it rang a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then, rather than stop on the obvious plot advancing teleporters, I left the fair and visited the nearby town, stuck my head into people's houses, and stuck my head in the mayor's house. Yeah, no kidding. I stuck my head into the mayor's house, got my tutorializing and the free stuff in there out of the way. I think I went into the bar or the inn or whatever it is. And I think I hit all the places there. Like I said, it's really hard to tell for me because everything is so small in that overworld map.
Yeah, and the other thing about that overworld map is that the actual locations you can visit are not obviously marked.
No, they're not.
Like, there's big build. If anybody's listening who's never played Chrono Trigger, the overworld map.
Spoilers.
Sorry. Spoilers for the overworld map you get introduced literally 5 minutes into. So if you're looking for a big surprise about how this game handles its overworld map differently, skip ahead 2 minutes. Unlike a traditional JRPG of the era where the overworld map, your characters were basically the same size as they were in the dungeons, and everything was on the same scale-ish. The overworld map is very zoomed out, and the characters are like 4 pixels wide.
Yeah.
And the towns are basically depicted as blocks, like city blocks of buildings. And some of them, if you stand up against them, you can enter the building.
Yeah.
But it's not obvious where those entry points are.
Yeah. Knowing which ones will let you in and which ones won't, not really clued in.
Yeah. Fortunately, that's, believe it or not a big breaking point to the game.
Hooray.
Yeah. The places you have to go are very obviously signposted.
I discovered I could take a boat somewhere.
Yeah.
And then I just by that point, the eye strain was getting to be a bit much, so I kind of closed things a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I will pick it back up again later. But that was about an hour's worth of play. I bet on the races and won enough of those. And like I said, I have petted some cats. Mm-hmm. I spent probably 10 minutes trying to line up on a jar, figuring out if it was my position or just the jar wouldn't break. None of the jars apparently break in any of the areas I'm in at this point. So none of the traditional locations for thieving are available in this game. I don't know. Not yet anyway.
This is not really a spoiler, I'll tell you. There's nothing. Trying to remember now, because there are a few hidden items. Oh. But there's nothing. Now I have to go. Like, searching every jar and pot and box won't do it. The game actually does it.
You're going to tell me something you shouldn't.
I don't know. Because it's not it'll save you some time and energy in searching absolutely everything. Uh-huh. Things sparkle. That's how they call your attention to searchable locations.
Okay.
Like, they will briefly sparkle when you enter a scene. Ah. Okay?
Because I have noticed some sparkles here and there.
Yeah. And the other thing is that sometimes elements of the background will move as if something's like shuddering around in there. Oh. So the game actually signposts where you can search for stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to, there's one item that is really very easy to miss and secret, and even that sparkles. Mm-hmm. So okay. Yeah, the game doesn't make you do pixel hunting like that. It's not not Dragon Quest.
Oh, good.
So.
Yeah, and I'm ignoring the fact that the rando girl that I met at the fair is quite obviously the princess everybody's looking for, so I'm just ignoring that.
She's nothing like the princess. They have a different name. She's a tomboy, not a princess, clearly.
Might want to tell that to the guy who told me she's quite a tomboy, too. I'm just saying. So I've been checking out Chrono Trigger. It's okay so far for the hour I've been into it and whatnot. I will go back to it and see what else is going on.
It's really worth it.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Yeah. I have not checked out Final Fantasy IV yet.
It's
not worth it?
No, it is. I wouldn't have sent it to you if I didn't think it was worth it.
Well, that's kind of the theory I was going on too.
Right. It is, I know this makes me unpopular to the Final Fantasy fans, but 4 is actually it's my second favorite because I like 9 a lot. But, everybody's about 6 or 7, but I'm about 4. 4 is where it was at.
Okay, that's fine. I've read the back of the box. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it's a fairly... 4 was sort of because 4 was released as 2 on the Super Nintendo. Because they didn't release
total sense.
2 or 3 in America. So when they got around, they decided 4 might sell in America. Because they were having trouble. So Square, the company that made it, like there were 2 major companies in Japan that were developing these role-playing games. One was Enix, and they were responsible for the Dragon Quest series. And the other one was Square, and they were responsible for the Final Fantasy series. And they just... neither company could get those games to catch on in America. They were struggling with it. They kept trying to do different things. That's how we got... There was a terrible game that was made called Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Which was basically, what if we made a boring, stupid final, role-playing game because Americans clearly don't like actual, well-plotted, good, RPGs with a strong narrative. So they made this thing where basically, like, how normally in like one of those games you walk around the overworld map and occasionally you get jumped by monsters that appear out of nowhere and then you have a fight and then they go away.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
So in Mystic Quest, movement is tile-based, or it's like a board game, so you move from space to space. And some of the spaces just have 10 monsters. So you stand on the space, and you just enter the space, and a monster fight happens. And then you do it again and again and again. 10 times, and then it's cleared out. And then you move on to the town. It was such a terrible idea. It was so badly done. Like, maybe this is what Americans want. We have no clue.
That's amazing.
And then, of course, 8 years and years later, Square and Enix became Square Enix.
And they learned from each other, and now everything is better.
Well, you'll notice I'm sending you games that are remakes of old games here, sir.
Yes, I see that.
I've heard good things about Final Fantasy 15. But I will not play any Final Fantasy with double digits. And,
the series ends at 9 for you.
The series ends at 9.
Now, what were the Final Fantasy things on the Game Boy called? Because I know they weren't just Final Fantasy; they were something else.
Well, actually, that's a really interesting question. We're talking about the original, black and white Game Boy, right? The brick.
Yes. Yeah. The gray and white, the green and white. Yes.
Yeah, so there were 3 games that were traditional Final Fantasy games. And they were Final Fantasy Legend 1, Final Fantasy Legend 2, and Final Fantasy Legend 3.
That's it, Final Fantasy Legend. I played all 3 of those.
Yeah, I liked those.
Yeah.
But there was also another game that wasn't technically a Final Fantasy game that they released in America as Final Fantasy Adventure. And it was the beginning of a spin-off series, which was the Secret of Mana series. And it was more like action RPG based, because you would actually move around. It was more like Legend of Zelda, where you're walking around the overworld map and you actually can swing your weapons at monsters as they roam around and that kind of a thing. And that became the Secret of Mana series.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah. I remember playing the Final Fantasy Legend games on the Game Boy, and I remember not finishing number 3. But the reason I didn't finish number 3 is because for all intents and purposes, it looked like the game was over. Right? Over and done, and I couldn't find any way to advance the story further or kick off the ending or nothing.
Uh-huh.
Right?
That was the one with time travel, right?
It might have been. I don't know. But I hunted around looking for a clue or something to do or anything. I mean, I just had like a huge big bad boss fight, which I thought was the final boss. Okay, and then we ended up back in town and blah, 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 and all this other stuff and deedly and whatnot. Couldn't get anything, no hints, no other places I hadn't been or anything like that. So I got frustrated and I just sold up all my gear. And then the game told me there was more.
Huh.
And I went, nope, I'm done.
Oh, I have to issue a correction immediately because I'm looking at it right now. Apparently, the Final Fantasy Legend games were also not Final Fantasy games. They were just released in the English, released in America as Final Fantasy games.
Well, I'm glad that's all sorted out and makes total sense now.
They were apparently the precursors of the Saga series. Yeah, this is another Saga. And if you want to play Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy Legend 3 and go back for it, you can play Saga Jiku no Hashi Shadow or Light on the Nintendo DS because it's a remake of that. Apparently.
Okay. Japanese have a lot of trouble getting their games named correctly, I guess. I don't know.
Well, actually, it's not their fault.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because these renaming issues always happen when they bring them over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's how we got, Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and then 7.
Right.
And then, later it turned out that 2 was 4 and 3 was 6.
Mm-hmm.
And how Dragon Quest was Dragon Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4,
yeah.
Dragon Quest 8. And that's all we saw. Yeah, so no, it's really not their fault.
I can construe it to be their fault, though.
Sure, fair enough.
I'm allowed to do that? All right, good. That's what I'm going to do then. What have you been playing?
So actually, I've been up to a couple of things.
Uh-oh.
I have been replaying Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, dear.
Oh, I kind of enjoy it.
There's another game that I started and never finished because I got stuck at some point and never went back to it. It's like, okay, so in my mind, this is how Kingdom Hearts starts. You're on an island. There's some goofy stuff about coconuts and fish and I don't know what else. And then
totally
you sail
accurate
off.
So far.
Yeah. And then you sail off to a different place for whatever reason, maybe a catastrophe or something. And you end up in a town, right? You end up in a town, and there's kind of this square in the town, an open air square in the town with buildings around it.
Yeah.
And then I just entirely lost the plot thread from there and had no idea what I was supposed to do or where I was supposed to go.
Have you considered you might not be good at video games?
This has occurred to me. Yes. This has occurred to me. Yes, that I have certain difficulties.
The part that I know exactly the part you're describing. And, and there is a reason why you get lost. Because the idea is you're supposed to keep wandering back and forth for a little while. And while you are wandering back and forth, Donald Duck and Goofy, just Goofy, are also wandering the town looking for you. And so every time you leave a screen, they come in from another direction and because they're looking for you. And then you walk off. And that goes on for a little while until you get frustrated and return to the beginning of the town and be like, I have no idea where the hell to go. And then you get jumped in a fight and then everybody comes together, basically.
See, here's the problem.
Mm-hmm. When you get frustrated, you just turn off the game. You don't.
I just turn it off because I don't equate frustration with fun in video games, I guess. Just turn it off. Anyway, you've been playing Kingdom Hearts.
I have. I'm actually just about done with it. Done with the first one. I got the final Kingdom Hearts final remix 1 and 1.5 and 2.8.
Jesus.
Well, this is they had okay. There's 2 Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2.
That makes sense so far.
Right. It shouldn't be that complicated.
Right.
But they released a whole bunch of other spin-off games. Like Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep and Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance and Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. And I kid you not, I'm not making up random words here. These are the actual names. You can look this up.
They have a table they roll on, clearly.
But anyway, so then every so often they re-release 1 and 2. And, just high definition it. And so they did Kingdom Hearts 1.5. And then they did Kingdom Hearts 2.5. And what they do is they throw some of the portable games on them, because you would need like a total of 6 different game systems to play all the Kingdom Hearts games. Because, they're on the PlayStation, they're on the PlayStation and the Xbox, I think, were the main games, and then some of them are on the DS, and some of them are on the Vita or the PlayStation Portable or whatever else, and some of them are mobile games only. And so they started compiling those games together with the remakes, so you could get Kingdom Hearts Final Mix 1.5, and that had Kingdom Hearts plus Chain of Memories, plus you could watch all the cutscenes from like Recoded or something. And then they did Kingdom Hearts 2.5, and then they decided to redo them again and add some extra cutscenes because somebody realized that the plot actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the cutscenes don't help because it's actually the plot itself that's the problem. But that's standard with Final, it is based half on the Final Fantasy universe.
Right.
So the ending is just going to come way the hell out of left field and make no sense. It's going to be, it's going to turn out that this guy was actually not the real villain, because the real villain was the spirit of death in the universe. No, okay. Spoilers for, oh God, which was it? Final Fantasy 9? There were 3 different people masquerading as the final boss of that game. And when one of them ends up being the last one standing, and you get into the fight with him, and you kill him, and he does the standard Final Fantasy thing where he has, well, now I'll show you my true form since you killed that one. Okay, fine. So you kill him, and then you're like, the game's over, right? No, because out of nowhere there appears this entity that's like, you know what? I'm the spirit of all death in the universe, and I'm actually the bad guy now. Because they felt they came up like one boss fight short.
Yeah,
so like
apparently.
And they do it all the freaking time. Every Final Fantasy game is like that.
Well, I don't recall too many of these JRPGs making any sense at all, regardless of what you're playing.
No, I know. But so anyway, so now I am playing the Kingdom Hearts re-release on the PlayStation 4, which is Kingdom Hearts 1.8 Final Mix High Def and Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Mix High Def. And also, it's got Chain of Memories and all the other stupid ones on there, and I'm not even touching those. Because those are the ones, by the way, that don't involve the Disney worlds.
Oh.
Those are the ones where it's just a bunch of, like, anime kids having this... Like... It's sort of like in the Harry Potter universe. Remember after the 4th book where everything got super serious?
Right.
But you still had the characters running around, like, using words like muggle and drinking giggle water. And, Arthur Weasley still didn't understand basic muggle practices, even though we discovered there's an entire government office devoted to hiding in plain sight. Right. And, like, all those artifacts of the silliness just get stuck into the seriousness. Because the tone shifted and it wasn't, there was no planned tonal shift. It was just, it got dark and there's still all the appendixes sticking off the darkness, right?
Yes, magic is serious business.
Right, and that's what all of the Kingdom Hearts spin-off games are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones where, they're like 4th year Harry Potter and up. Where it's all just the emo anime people running around having wars and philosophizing endlessly about the nihilism of existence. And well, no, I mean, seriously, that's the point. The whole story gets kickstarted because in the beginning of the universe, there is light and darkness, and where they merge is the heart of the universe, right? And so everybody was having a war to control it, and they ultimately destroyed the whole universe. And the universe was like, oops, the whole universe got destroyed, and made a new universe in its place. Okay, fine. Then along came this scientist, and he discovered this secret history, and finds himself wondering, well, if that happened the first time, what would happen if I destroyed the whole universe again? Let's see what'll come out this time. And that is literally the inciting incident of the plot of all the Kingdom Hearts games, was, let's see what'll happen if I destroy the whole thing again. Wonder what'll happen.
So what you're saying is Elon Musk decides the entire universe is merely a simulation run by a much larger universe?
Yeah. And he decides to crash it just to see if maybe they, just to see if it'll reboot.
Okay. That's wonderful.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
Oh.
And I don't know how the hell you're supposed to get that out of all those games anyway. I had to watch like a 20-minute plot summary. Because I was curious, like, what the hell is all this other stuff? It was simple. All the Disney villains band together and kidnap all the Disney princesses, because through the magic of Disney princesses, they could they could shroud the universe in darkness. I'm on board with that story. Right?
Yeah. It makes sense in its own way. It's fine.
And they learn how to control these evil monsters that come from the darkness in people's hearts. When people are consumed by the darkness in their hearts, they die and they leave behind shadow monsters. I'm on board with that too.
It's fine. It doesn't need any more expansion than that.
Right?
Go save the princesses. Okay. We can do that.
See, this is the problem. There's two ways for all this stuff to go. And I complain about both of them. We have complained endlessly about the thing that is planned to be a franchise from the get-go, right? Where it's like, we're going to just make this a franchise. So everything is going to be open-ended so that we can make more stuff. Then there's the other ones where they plan a story that works perfectly fine. And then it does well. They're like, well, what do we do now? Well, okay. So when you're given to the darkness in your heart, your heart becomes a heartless, which they really didn't think that naming convention through.
No, they did not.
The darkness in your heart literally becomes the heartless. They're like, well, what happens to the body that's left behind? Well, that clearly becomes a nobody. So what if the second game is about the nobodies? Like, what is this never-ending story? First we're fighting the nothing, and then it's the emptiness? Like, can't it just be like Satan? It's like vague.
So much easier that way.
Why do these villains have to be philosophical concepts? I mean, it's Maleficent. She turns into a dragon. That's fine. Right?
Just roll with it, people. Come on. Why you got to complicate up my storyline?
Right? I mean, when you get down to it, it's the same as the story of the one Shrek 3, where all the villains team up.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all just upset because they kept losing.
Right.
That's basically the first Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
And then
that's reasonable.
Then it takes a turn on Fourth and Bananas, and we have this whole subplot about, well, I'm going to rip open the heart of the universe and see if I can break it all. Which pretty much does come out of left field, too. Because you beat Maleficent, she turns into a dragon, you beat her. And then, inexplicably, also remember Fantasia the Night on Bald Mountain?
Yes.
That thing is there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just like, let's throw that in, too.
Might as well.
Yeah, so I've been having fun with it, though. I actually enjoy the gameplay of them. They're nice, fun, platformy action games that aren't too hard, so I find them kind of mindless. You just jam on the buttons. It's like baby's first God of War for people who don't like gore.
Okay, that makes sense. Sure, why not?
I need a break before I get like Monster Hunter or Dark Souls remastered.
Were either of those games post Hercules?
Oh yeah, in the first game actually, Hercules is one of the worlds you visit. Or Olympus. Okay. Though it's actually kind of a lame world because it's just a coliseum. It's just a place where you go and fight waves of monsters. You know, obviously they tried to get as many of the voice actors as possible.
Right.
And I have to give a shout out because Philoctetes was played by Discount DeVito. my favorite. Like every so often, like I'm trying to remember all the movies he's been in. Like remember Arnold Schwarzenegger's buddy in Total Recall, the construction worker who's like, "Hey, is that Danny? Oh no, it's not Danny DeVito, but it sure looks and sounds really close to him."
Okay.
There is this actor. I gotta look this up now. There is this actor who looks and sounds very much like Danny DeVito to the point where you always do a double take where it's like, wait, is that Danny DeVito? Oh no, it's not. What if I just type, who is the actor who looks and sounds like Danny DeVito?
I don't know. Does that get you anywhere?
No, it thinks I was looking for Danny DeVito.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, that does make sense. It does really,
Robert Costanzo.
Oh, Robert Costanza. Okay.
Yeah. He was in Die Hard 2.
Yeah.
He was in City Slickers.
Total Recall.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the guy who you always say, hey, wait, is that Danny DeVito? Oh, no, it's not. It's...
Okay, you ready? You ready for the trivia throwback?
Yeah, go ahead.
In 1992, Robert Costanza played Stenchler in the Sewer Shark video game.
Oh my God, he did.
Yes.
Oh, and he was excellent. 10,000 pounds of tube steak.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
He was also in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Really?
Yes.
Who was he?
Slade Bender in the episode Manhunt in 1989. Oh, and in a throwback to something we talked about before, but I don't know if we recorded it or not.
Oh no, was it episode 17 again?
He played Father Romeo in Mama Maloney, the TV series. I'm going to stop this before we have now listed every show available on IMDb.
I've actually been trying to avoid the feedback because I know what's coming.
You cannot avoid this feedback, sir.
I know. You felt it was substantial enough to email me the moment it came in so that I could be prepared to deal with this.
Yes.
Especially because the argument that led, or the discussion and everything that circulated around it ultimately led you to washing your hands of it all and leaving it to me.
That's right. Because you are the Lord High Protector of the realm.
Lord Protector. I'm not Lord High Protector.
No, you're Lord High Protector because you are the only one, therefore you are the highest. You're stuck.
No, I am the Oliver Cromwell of this realm, okay?
You're petard, sir. Have it.
Isn't a petard an explosion?
I don't know. No, a petard is I don't care. Stop trying to throw me off. You didn't deign to give me a title, and you're the only one with the title, so therefore this is your responsibility.
I claimed my title. All you have to do is claim yours.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the power behind the throne, but we'll see what happens. All right.
Yeah, so I'm easily manipulated by some evil vizier. That's one of my character traits.
It seems like it. It seems like it might be the case. All right. We received on the website. I don't know. Is this an ultimatum? It sounds like an ultimatum. I don't know. It really
does. You know what? Actually, to me, this sounds like a lone agitator.
Oh.
That's what this sounds like.
Oh, somebody trying to foment dissent, huh? Mm-hmm. All right. From the website, Dragon Counselor Volcronos. I don't know. He wrote in to say, to our illustrious counselors, Fiddleback and Angry, I must register my deep and profound disappointment in the changes made in this episode. He's talking about episode 21, Appalachian Trail. To lose one's proto-ambassadorship with all the requisite honors and salary is bad enough. But to forego all mention of one of the founding ethos in our country's permanent title is simply too much. This podcast is titled Digressions and Dragons, not simply digressions. The stability of any duumvirate is predicated upon a stable and functioning relationship between its two ruling powers, symbolized in the twin pillars of our Constitution, digressions and dragons. Minimizing one of these foundations so thoroughly that it is not even the inspiration for a single name option is an outrage. Indeed, it is an undeniable omen of an imminent destabilization of our government and its swift collapse into tyranny. Only the harmonious equalization of both digressions and dragons in our nation can carry us to 1,000 episodes and beyond. If it is too late to integrate dragons into our naming options, such as this is why it's not integrated. Digress a lot. Then dragons must be given a prominent place in our national flag, national anthem, national icon, national bird, and national t-shirts. Available at tpublic.com. See the link in the show notes. Another option would be to refer to ourselves as the Dragon Empire of Digressalot. Name not final, used only as an example. I feel that equal representation of both digressions and dragons is not only critical for internal stability, but an important step toward international fear and recognition as we take our place on the world stage. Starting a new country is full of challenges for our ambassadors. Anything we can do to aid in name recognition is beneficial. In short, as a founding member and listener to this podcast country, I feel legally entitled to a more favorable ratio of dragons to digressions. Your loyal servant and faithful listener, Dragon Counselor Volcronos, formerly Ambassador. Your response, sir.
First of all, Counselor Volcronos, you were never an ambassador. If you refer back to the original discussion of the ambassador title, it was specifically reserved for those who began listening to our podcast before the official release date, as compared to those who bought Nintendo DS, 3DSs, DSs, it matters not. Those who bought Nintendo DSs before the official price drop, the early adopters. Where were you when we were establishing the founding principles? It is easy for some counselor come lately to show up, claim an ambassadorship, and demand that we stay true to these founding principles, which they claim to be an expert on, when they were not here for the founding of the nation. And to that point, I say that 104 episodes ago, we did bring forth in the internet a new podcast conceived in digressions and dragons. But a country, any country, if it is to be strong, it cannot remain still. It cannot remain stationary. It must evolve. It must grow beyond its founding principles. It must look at those principles and recognize when one of those principles is not serving the same purpose as the other, prune where pruning is needed, and focus on those principles that will turn it into a great power. I have nothing against dragons. They have a wonderful symbolic meaning. And certainly there will be the possibility that they will appear on our flag, our anthem, or national t-shirts. And I'm pretty sure they appear in at least one of our 20 banner website banners. Is that not correct?
You are correct, sir.
Right. Thank you. But to call them a founding principle, I think that's drastically overstating it. And so, to you, I say this. Accept the position you have been offered as counselor. And in the spirit of building bridges and ensuring that all of our citizens' concerns are dealt with, you may even keep the honorific as Dragon Counselor, and all rights, privileges, and salaries thereunto pertaining. But you cannot be stripped of something that you never truly had due to an oversight. And that's all. Also, come down off that barricade. No one's coming to help you to fight. Paris will not be coming to your side, sir.
Indeed. Well handled. Well said.
Remind me after we get out of the feedback, because I forgot about this whole Les Mis thing.
You also helpfully clarified a few points for others who have been asking.
Oh.
Throughout the course of the last 2 weeks or whatever it is.
What, the ambassador thing?
Yes.
Go back to that first episode. Was it it was like the third episode.
Something like that.
When we made up this thing about ambassadors as literally as a running joke. Because there were people who managed to find the podcast before we made it live, because we had to post the website, right? That was what I don't know.
Yes,
who did that.
yes. We had to have something in the feed in order to post the feed out to iTunes and other places.
Right. So our website or our podcast technically existed before it existed. And when we actually put it up, we were kind of surprised to discover we had a non-zero number of subscribers/listeners or something like that.
Right.
And so the joke was those were our ambassadors.
Right. I'm not going to name names here, okay? Because I don't want to embarrass anybody or anything like that. But we are not going to be building an entire role-playing game setting out of Digress a Lot. That's not going to happen.
What? We're... Kind of wish you told me that yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought you knew.
No, it's fine. I didn't have much.
Yeah, okay, good. Only about 40 pages?
Yeah, it was only one day at work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And frankly, I would if you have to ask if you are the third shadow ambassador, you probably aren't.
See, no, I don't. Okay, I didn't interpret that as the person asking. I interpreted that as they were identifying themselves as it. And the thing was, we could not remember who the third person was. Right. I was fairly sure there was a third person.
That's the problem.
Right.
Because any number of people in the intervening time have said or messaged me or emailed me or commented on the website or whatever to say, oh, I think I'm the third person because.
All right. So, you've gotten multiple messages? I just got the one.
We have created, I have to tell you, we have created the most stressful thing I've had to deal with in the last 2 weeks. Just with this whole ambassador and counselor and minister thing.
This has been the most stressful thing you've had to deal with in the past 2 weeks?
I know.
I want
it's like
your
a charmed life.
Okay?
It's a charmed life, yes. I mean, aside from people pounding on my house with their little hammers as they install a new roof for the last 3 days, this has been it. This is like, I don't know what to do about it at this point. And frankly, I would just like people to be whatever they think they ought to be. But there's a rule, because one of the things you think you can be, you can't actually be per Angry's preferences. And here I do use the name Angry, Angry's preferences and the original stipulations, which I screwed up, apparently.
Yes,
so I'm sorry.
I blame all of this on you. I just make jokes. I can't be expected to foresee the consequences of them.
No, of course not. Of course not. Why would you do that?
For those of you who feel very strongly about the dragon issue, or wearing a dragon on you, I will highly suggest that you visit our sponsor, GamerConcepts.com, because they have a shirt that prominently says that you just are desperate to identify as a dragon. Specifically their Dragonborn t-shirt, because I want to look like a dragon.
That's a good choice.
Yeah. And it's one of many shirts that they offer, though I think the other one is, if you are female and wish to identify with dragons, we mentioned in the past the Dragons Are a Girl's Best Friend t-shirt.
We have.
So you should check those out, or any other of their fine t-shirts and gamer wear.
Head over to gamerconcepts.com, find the dragon of your choice, and while you're there, tell them we sent you.
For many years, I have been a huge fan of Les Miserables, the Broadway show.
The Broadway show, okay.
The Broadway show. It was fantastic. I actually started to get into it because one of my college roommates back at my first attempt at college, 96, 97, he was a big fan of Broadway shows, and I heard him playing the soundtrack to Les Mis and fell in love with the soundtrack. And then my parents took me to see it on Broadway for my birthday. And the production was amazing, and I have loved the story ever since. I even tried to read the unabridged version, which was a mistake.
Yes.
Well, like, it's not... The problem was not the story or even the density of the writing. It was that Victor Hugo frequently gets distracted and inserts socio-political essays into his books. So preceding the bit where one of the, I guess, Cosette is raised at a convent under the care of her adopted father, Jean Valjean. There is a chapter entitled something like "The Convent as a Social Construct," in which he literally just goes on for pages about the role that convents and monasteries played in French life at the time. Like, it's not related to the story. Like, it's a sociology paper. It's literally a sociology paper. It does not mention the characters. It's just, now I'd like to pontificate about this. There is a long, protracted, and very disgusting description of the inadequate drainage and sanitary sewers in Paris at the time. So yeah, the book is impossible. The book is unreadable. Okay. Unless you get an abridged version where they cut out all the non-story. So then, I happened to be talking about it with Tiny, because I guess I was listening to the soundtrack recently. And she was curious about it. And I remembered that they had done a movie version of it that I had enjoyed. And so I'm like, well, why don't we sit and watch the movie? And by luck, we happened to be in a, one of those used record stores that also sells DVDs. And as we were browsing around, I found the 20th anniversary, I think it was the London Philharmonic, recorded by the BBC. They did a concert production of Les Mis. That was fantastic. And I found it for like $20. So I was really happy with that. And then she turned up the movie. I'm like, fantastic. And we made popcorn and we had a movie night. And we're watching the movie, and like, and nothing is as I remember it. So, first of all, it stars Hugh Jackman and Russell Crowe. And I could have sworn that it wasn't Hugh Jackman and Russell Crowe. And I'm trying to remember why I think that. And they're singing, and neither Hugh Jackman nor Russell Crowe can sing. They just can't. Which, to me, if you're casting a musical, seems like the first question you want to ask.
You would think so, yes.
Like, I realize that they got these names. I mean, Hugh Jackman, at least, he actually is not a bad singer. And he's certainly not bad at emoting and performing. Especially, I mean, he's a trained actor and dancer, is he not? He's trained in music theater.
I'm going to pretend that's a yes.
Yeah, I swear that's true. But I could be wrong. And I'm like trying to remember why, and I'm gradually coming to hate this movie that we're watching. And I can't remember it because I have a very clear memory of seeing the Les Mis movie and really enjoying it. But this was a long time ago. And then we get to the Thénardiers. The Thénardier. Monsieur and Madame Thénardier. The innkeeper and his wife, who are sort of the comic relief characters. But they're like comic relief scoundrels. They're scoundrels and con artists. And they have like... Monsieur Thénardier has the greatest song in the history of musical theater. Not counting anything ever done by Gilbert and Sullivan.
Sure.
It's called Master of the House, and it is this fantastic song where he claims to be everybody's, like, he's the innkeeper in the town. So he's the innkeeper and the barkeeper, and everybody comes to see him, and everybody loves him, and he's always got a sympathetic shoulder and all that stuff. And he has that great song that he's singing about how beloved he is, and the whole crowd sings along with him. And then when he goes back into the kitchen on the other side of the set, he's singing how he scams people, steals from them, rips them off, and all the little games he's playing. And then he comes back out and everybody's happy to see him. And so it's a really fun song about the two faces of this guy. And then his wife gets involved. And when he's in the kitchen, she starts singing about how terrible and useless he is. Until he comes out, and then she's drunk and she's adding like comments to his parts of the song. It's a fantastic song. But they're scoundrels, and by the end, they are picking, they're picking loot off the bodies of these students who were gunned down in the Paris streets trying to start a rebellion against the government. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're picking money off the corpses and they don't care because they're actually monstrous people, and they're child abusers and they're thieves and they're criminals. So they're funny at first, but not super funny until Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter decided to play them. Friggin' Borat. Okay. And what was her name? Bellatrix Lestrange. Mm-hmm. Mincing around on the stage, in the movie, it wasn't a stage. They're mincing around. They think they're in a freaking comedy. Okay? Not the comic relief in a tragedy. And, oh my God, they ruined those characters. And I'm so mad. And it wasn't until later on that I figured, and also the guy from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was in that. He was Marius, and he was really good. And I am coming to really like that actor. The guy who played Newt Scamander. Anyway, Eddie Redmayne. I'm actually coming to like him, but that was the only bright spot in this movie. And I'm trying to figure out why. And then I realized there was a completely different Les Miserables that came out in 1998 that was not a musical, starring Liam Neeson, Jeffrey Rush, Uma Thurman was in it, Claire Danes was in it, and it was fantastic. And that was the movie that I thought we were going to watch. And I was so sad because I was trying to share with Tiny this show and this story that I absolutely love. This show that if I weren't a manly man, it would make me cry. But I certainly don't ever cry at it, Right. And instead what we got was this, oh my God, it was so bad. They ruined it. And honestly, that's it. That's the story. I'm just so depressed about it. The end. Also, you know what? I'm going to come out and say it. I hate Helena Bonham Carter. I probably would hate Sacha Baron Cohen too, if I had, ever watched anything he was in. But the only thing I know him from was when he ruined Les Mis. And I know he was in Borat, but I sure as hell wasn't watching that.
Our lesson from this is?
Check IMDb before you watch anything.
Okay.
Russell Crowe can't sing. But you know what? Then. Okay, actually, this is it. This is the lesson. Because this goes back to Rent also. And also, and I know I'm going to get some hate for this, Phantom of the Opera. If they take a Broadway show and turn it into a movie and try to continue to be a musical, it is bad. If they turn a Broadway show into a movie and don't take away the musical part and just make it a drama, it's going to be bad. That's the lesson. That's what I need to take away. Granted, it's not a lesson with a lot of broad application in my life, but...
You'll be interested to know that the director of your version, the version of Les Mis that you have seen...
No, I've seen them both. Are we talking 88 or...
The one with Russell Crowe.
Okay.
His next project is apparently Cats.
Good, he can ruin that. Who cares? It's Cats. Keep him away. Oh my God. Keep him away from anything that I liked, though. Who was it? Who ruined that movie? Who was this director?
This is Tom Hooper.
Who's Tom Hooper?
Well, unfortunately, he's also the guy who directed The King's Speech.
No kidding.
And one of my favorite soccer films, The Damned United.
Is that the one where there's no rule that says a dog can't play soccer?
No.
Oh. Maybe he just shouldn't try to direct musicals.
I don't know.
I'm sorry to hear that. I also don't know who he is, so.
Yeah, it's fine. There's probably a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, no, because The King's Speech was good, wasn't it? Like
that's my understanding. I've never seen
loved it.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Wasn't it like critically acclaimed and made a gajillion dollars?
Probably.
Yeah, let's see. It had. I think they're missing a comma and some digits there. Yeah, it had King's Speech had a budget of $15 million and made $375 million worldwide.
Right. Look who was in it.
I don't know who was in it.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh God, I hate her.
She was playing Queen Elizabeth. We're done. This topic is done. This is over. Over and done. I was in your Discord server earlier today, sir.
Uh-huh.
And as I often do, I was sitting there observing the conversation going on around me, and some people were talking about some bad players and other stuff and whatnot. And I thought to myself, as I often do, because so few other people can hear my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a bad player? Because it sounded to me like part of the discussion that was going on was not really about bad players.
Mm-hmm.
It was about players who were not doing what the GM wanted them to do.
Well, that's one of the definitions of bad player.
Is it?
Certainly.
Is it really?
Absolutely. It's just like one of the definitions of railroading is the GM did something you don't like. And one of the definitions of metagaming is a player did something I don't like.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean, do you want to get rid of the facetious part and do this seriously?
Well, I mean, I think we should. I think we owe it to ourselves to actually discuss what a bad player is and if such a thing exists at the gaming table.
Okay. All right. So, your thoughts, then. First of all, do bad players even exist? Is there such a thing?
Well, as we often do in these things, I feel like it's important to define our terms.
Okay, fair enough.
Because bad player is too broad, too generic, and leaves it open to too much interpretation.
Okay.
I think. Insofar as do bad players exist, I'm going to say no. I want to define player as the person at the game participating in the game in one form or another.
So just so that I'm clear, does your player include GM?
Yes,
okay.
and it should.
That's fair. I actually agree. A GM is a player. Mm-hmm. But they're not a player. They're a player.
Yeah. He's playing a different game.
Right.
Than the rest of the players.
Well, he should be enjoying the game too.
Yes, he absolutely should.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, in terms of good, if we're working on good, now that we've sort of narrowed player down, mm-hmm. if we're working in terms of good, I'm thinking that what you're looking for as a good player is a minimum of wants to play the game everyone else is playing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What we've got is, for good player then, is somebody who wants to play the game that everybody else is playing and is a person in that game.
Okay.
All right. I realize that's sort of circular now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but it gets us started anyway. Then you can complain about how I didn't do it right.
I don't always do that.
No. But okay, so
in this case I'm gonna, but
yeah, I know. So I'm going to go with the contention that no, there's no such thing as a bad player. But I am prepared to say that there are such things as players who do not fit with the group they're at.
Okay. I'm going to say there is certainly such a thing as a bad player.
Okay.
Okay. Because there are certain aspects of role-playing games, and I'm not even saying Dungeons and Dragons, I'm saying all role-playing games.
Sure.
That basically they cross all tables.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? For one thing, a role-playing game is a group endeavor. Okay? There is a group of people involved. At minimum, there are two players. There is a player and a GM. But rarely is it just two players. Right?
Right.
There are a certain number of players out there who are also GMs, because this can be true of GMs and players, who are essentially selfish
mm-hmm.
and do not care whether or not the rest of the table is having a good time. They care only for their own enjoyment, which in itself is not necessarily a problem until they choose their own enjoyment at the expense of other players. Now, sometimes people are merely thoughtless, and sometimes, as you suggest, that's merely a type mismatch. Like, I want to be playing a hack and slashy game, and everybody else is trying to parlay, and I'm, like, beating up people. That could be just thoughtless. That could just be a mismatch of expectations. But there are a certain number of players who, even after being made aware of the issue, either they do two things. Number one, they don't care. So they don't modify their behavior to suit the group, at least to compromise. You know, that is, they're not interested in compromise with the group of saying, okay, I understand that. So if you'll let me get it, if you'll make sure that there's a certain number of combats involved, I'll take the sidelines and the talky bits, and then we can all be happy. Okay. But there are selfish people who have no interest in compromise. They see any compromise is a loss for themselves and will not do it. And they are also not willing to simply say, all right, this isn't the group for me. I'm going to walk away. I'll go find another group. Okay. There are people who are that selfish. And there are also people, and they're not common. I'm not saying that there's a huge number of them, but there are a certain number of people who actually do get their enjoyment from dominating other people. Be it out competing the other people or proving they are the best. People who have to be on the people have to be at the top. Or people who do enjoy kicking over other people's sandcastles. That's perfectly fine. I know this is going to be weird for me to say. That's perfectly fine behavior. That's perfectly fine behavior in certain settings. Like if you get into an online shooter, like you play Call of Duty, that's pretty much de rigueur for the community there. is that it's a group of people who all pretty much enjoy kicking over each other's sandcastles. But in a team-based, cooperative, collaborative game like a role-playing game, that makes you a bad player. So that's where I stand on it.
Is that really a bad player, though, or is it just somebody who is not in the group that they would best fit with, and somebody who, if the GM were to buckle down a bit, could be trained to play better, to be a better player?
Well, okay. First of all, I mean, you'll notice I did make a point of saying not interested in compromise.
Okay.
And right. I will say right here, if you are uninterested in compromise, as a general rule, you are bad at any group activity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You do not belong in group activities at all. Because all group activities necessarily include some level of compromise. No matter how close a match you are for everybody, eventually there's going to be a thing where you need to be willing to compromise. And if they are so recalcitrant, where they would compromise, except that everybody has to meet them very far over there, which is sort of implied in the whole they need to be trained. If the GM really works hard at them, they could turn them into the sort of player that would fit. Well, I would argue that that is also a bad player because they are demanding an undue effort on the GM's part. Like, the GM is also doing this for fun. We all are. Mm-hmm. So if you come to the table and your personal selfishness and demand for a level of compromise that is far over there makes me do a lot of extra work to drag you to the middle, then you have created stress for me as the GM. You have created work for me. That is a bad player. I don't need that, and I don't want you at my table.
To a certain extent, aren't GMs responsible for making sure their players kind of learn how to play and how to interact with not just the game, but with the other people at the table?
Yeah, but I'm not responsible for teaching people basic social skills. Stuff they should have learned in kindergarten. Okay? And this is the thing, too, okay? Once again, we get into one of these conversations where we're talking about ideals.
Sure.
Okay, we're talking about things like ideals and duties and responsibilities. And that's all very, very nice to talk about. But at the end of the day, this is still a thing we all do for fun. So yes, to some extent, do I have a responsibility to try and bring all the people at the table together? And if somebody's a little, like, the shepherd is supposed to spend the most time with the sheep that goes wandering, kind of the magnanimous Christian principle there. Yeah, I guess so. In reality, I'm doing this for fun. And the minute it stops being fun for me, I'm walking away. So yeah, it's nice to say, responsibility and duty and bring everyone together. But this is also my personal enjoyment time. And if somebody is going to dick around and ruin that, I don't want them around. So, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to take these ideas of good and bad, okay, and make some sort of objective criteria about it, when what it really comes down to is this person ruining my fun? And does this person ruin the fun of most of the tables they sit at? Yeah, that I would say, from a qualitative standpoint, that's a bad player. A bad player is someone who most of the people who play with them have a bad experience. And that's it. I don't think you can get more objective than that. And I know those people exist because, number one, I've run games for them, briefly. And number two, I have also been involved in organized play things at, gaming stores and stuff, where we had, every game store has that player. That guy who shows up to, or girl, because it can be both, who shows up to these events, and whoever's running that event knows they're in for a bad time. Okay? And you know their names. You ran a game store, I'm sure. Did you run events at your game store?
Yep.
Did you have a list of those people at least in the back of your head?
I had a list.
There you go. Those are bad players. They make everybody's lives miserable when they show up to the game table. Bad player.
Okay.
Sorry. I know I got ranty there, but...
You've convinced me there is such a thing as bad players.
Mm-hmm.
Why are so many of them allowed to stick around so long in games they don't belong in?
Well... See, this... What we really run into here, when we talk about questions like this, is that the game table, to a certain extent, is a microcosm for basically society. Okay? Why does that group of people allow that one player who annoys them to keep coming to the table? Well, probably because he's their friend, and they would feel tremendously guilty excluding him. So they feel, so rather than anyone have a confrontation with him, they just put up with it far longer than they should. Or, I don't know, why do people stay in bad relationships and bad friendships?
Oh.
Right? People end up in toxic relationships, and I don't mean relationships like romantic, all sorts of relationships. Why do people stay in toxic relationships? For a huge number of reasons. Everything from politeness and guilt to having a low self-esteem and not thinking you deserve a better relationship to anything else. And yeah, it can happen at gaming groups too.
But you're there for your fun, right?
Yeah, and in theory, you go home for the holidays to visit your family for fun. And yet still the arguments erupt. Your family drives you crazy. You love them, but you don't always like them. It's the same thing. We often put ourselves into social situations that should exist purely for fun that hurt.
I mean, seriously, though, I okay, you're right. Yes, of course. I will grant you that. But I have a very easy time of looking at somebody who is causing me to not have fun and then never associate with that person again. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to the gaming table. If you make me miserable or you prevent me from enjoying myself or you're such a big production or a problem that special measures have to be taken to deal with you, I will play with you again. I will ask you to leave my group. If it's in my house, I might ask you to leave my house. But I don't feel compelled to sit there and have my time for enjoyment of things screwed up by somebody else. I don't care how well I know them. Mm-hmm. If I know them really well, I might be a little more polite about it. Like, look, man, this isn't really your thing. I can tell you're not really enjoying it and you're kind of mucking things up for everybody else. And maybe, it's okay if you want to go do something else or want to be doing something else or whatever. That's fine. That's not a big deal. It's not going to screw up our friendship or anything like that. Okay. That's my polite approach, right?
Of course.
The other one is the not very polite approach. And I'm sure everybody can imagine what that would be like. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel like I have to put up with it week after week or day after day or session after session or whatever. This is a thing I volunteered to do, okay? I'm doing it voluntarily for enjoyment. If you're screwing that up, then I don't have to game with you. And if that means that I'm the one that has to leave, then I will. Because I can't see spending what little free time I might have being annoyed or upset or just flat out not having a good time. Mm-hmm. And I genuinely do not get why. I understand the thing about relationships in family and that kind of stuff. That's a different metric. Mm-hmm. All right. But when it comes to games and gaming, I'd rather not play than have a bad time playing.
Right. Fair enough. But again, that's a skill that you learn. Cutting out, if you're playing with a group of strangers, I will say with you, it's very easy to send someone away from that table if you have no other personal ties to those people. You know, the closer you get to that person, the more complicated it becomes. Right? Because again, you know, generally people don't game with strangers. They game with friends. Sometimes they game with family. And that does add that whole dynamic of how do you cut out a bad player who is also your brother or your sister or your cousin, you know, or someone who has been your best friend for years and years and years and years. And that's, you know, and you have gotten used to the way he is because he's kind of a jerk at times, but he's funny and you guys get along well. But then you put him in a group of people and suddenly, you know, he's like dropping a piranha in the kiddie pool. So, you know, how do you cut that person out? Now, I understand that some people are well adjusted enough to recognize bad relationships, whatever they may be, and can say, you know what? This is supposed to be for pleasure. So I can simply say, hey, this is unfair to me personally, and excise them with no guilt. But not everybody is that skilled about it. In fact, I would say that's another part of growing up is learning how to deal with people that you genuinely do not like. That's something. It's learning how to deal with people who you don't get along with. It's just another skill that you learn. And I'm 100% with you, by the way. I do not allow what I would consider to be a problem person at my tables. I will cut them out. Or alternatively, if I have a group of problem people and that has actually happened, I will walk out. You know? And
yep.
But it's not always easy for everybody because you never know what other emotional baggage is wrapped up in that. Plus, remember, you know, human beings by their nature have a certain amount of agreeableness, right? There's a certain amount of subsuming your own desires to conform to the group. And so if you're sitting around in a group and someone is annoying you and you're looking around at the rest of the table and nobody else seems to be annoyed, you hide your annoyance, right? That's what we're taught to do. If I'm the only one having a problem here and I'm here with the group, maybe I'll just sit on it. Maybe it's not that bad. I can deal with it. And if everybody else at the table is doing the same thing, then nobody realizes that you know what I mean? Nobody realizes they're all being annoyed by the same thing and everybody's hiding it for far longer than they should. And that's another way that a toxic player can just stay at a table for a long period of time because everybody is just trying to not be the one to say, we got to get rid of that guy. He's ruining this for us. You know, until finally it explodes into a fight, which is always how it happens.
Oh,
eventually someone blows up. But you know, that's also just part of it's just this is a part of every group activity though. Like I love when people talk about this stuff. Like these problems are unique to gamers. It's like, what do you do when, you know, you have everyone together for the game and they all just want to BS and nobody wants to pay attention? Well, you know, other hobbies don't have to deal with this. This is a problem unique to us. It's like, yeah, try organizing a bowling league. You know, same thing. Ever been on a softball team or a baseball team or whatever? There you go. Every group activity has the same problems as role-playing games. What do we do with that one guy we don't like? You know, especially if he's the one who, like, you know, he brings the beer every week. It's like, well, we accept the annoyance because he brings the beer. I do think, though, that there is a danger in using the thing is, if you can label a player as a bad player, then that, you know, because that sort of implies an objective value judgment, it makes it easier to cut them out. Because I think that the idea of using like bad player, good player as objective measures is, I don't think it gets you very far. I think
because like I said when I started out, they're too broad and too generic, and they apply differently to different people, and people have different views of how a player is good and or bad.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. If you have a player who's sitting at your table who is not willing to compromise to the degree they need to fit into your table. Does it matter if they make all other tables miserable? Not hardly. They're still making your table miserable. They can leave.
Right.
Maybe they're actually a bad player. Maybe they're not. But that's something that can only be assessed by a pattern anyway. You know, it's like you'd have to follow this player from table to table. And like, does everybody hate this guy? Well, then, yeah, he's obviously a bad player. If not, you know, I don't know if he's a bad player or not, but he sure as hell is bad for us.
Right.
You know,
I think that's a much more important distinction. I mean, because it might not even be that he's an actual bad player. He or she is an actual bad player.
Right.
It might just be you're not playing their type of game.
Right. I certainly agree that that's possible. But then, of course, then you have the same thing that every other group has. You know, if everybody else is really into the bowling and you have the one guy who just wants to drink beer and eat fried foods and hang out and shoot the bull, yeah, he's not a good fit for your bowling league. So you got two choices. Either he steps up and takes the bowling more seriously, or he finds a league that he fits into.
Right.
You know, and that's something that every group has to just hit a compromise on. You know, and if the person is uncompromising, then the group has to kick him out. But I will say selfishness and an uncompromising nature are the qualities of an objectively bad player.
I feel like if we've got somebody who is definitely not fitting in with our group, particularly if they are not fitting in on your two objective criteria, that I therefore should not have to feel bad about either asking them to leave or having the discussion about whether they should leave or not.
Well, that's down to you.
Yeah. Well,
no, I understand what you're saying. And here's the thing. I would tell any GM out there, no, don't feel bad about that. Because at the end of the day, you're doing this for your fun, and everybody who's sitting around the table is doing it for their fun. And if there's someone there who is greatly impeding everybody's fun, then you owe them you don't owe anyone a seat at your table. That's number one.
Aha.
Nobody is owed a seat at your table. Unless you are running a game at a convention at which people have paid, and therefore you are obligated contractually to accept anybody who sits down at your table. Apart from that, nobody is owed a seat at your table. Just like nobody is owed your friendship. So if there is someone who is not working at your table, you send them away. Are you going to feel guilty about it? Yeah, probably. It's just normal to feel guilty. Because this is the thing, okay? When you send someone away, you are rejecting them. Rejection is a painful thing for humans to deal with. As human beings, we are pre-programmed to recognize pain in other people. So, no matter what the reason, the minute you reject someone, you know you have caused them pain. You can understand that pain, you can sympathize with it, and therefore you will feel guilty for causing them pain. You're going to feel guilty about it. I wouldn't waste too much time on the guilt. But again, getting over guilt is yet another thing that just takes a skill. You know, these are the skills of being a conscious human being. You know, how do you deal with guilt? How do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with having to reject someone? At the same time, though, I mean, now here's the other question. So let's say that there is a problem player at the table, but everybody but you is pretty much, like, everybody but you is willing to tolerate them for some reason. Like, maybe they're funny, you know, or they bring the beer. But for you, they're really ruining the fun. So now what?
I need to go find a different table. You know, a different game somewhere. And I shouldn't feel bad about that either. Right.
Well, but do you feel, does that feel unfair?
No, because I'm odd man out. You know, if everybody else is okay with everything going on and I'm the only one who really has that problem and it's a genuine problem, it's not just something I think I'm making up or whatever, then I feel like it's almost my responsibility to find a group or a game that fits better with me.
Well, in that respect, I totally agree, because you are responsible for your own fun.
Right.
Nobody but you knows how you're feeling, so you are responsible for taking care of your own feelings. Right? Or at least, telling people how you're feeling, and then if they don't agree, well, then you've got a problem.
Right.
Now, what if you're the DM in that situation? Like, I mean, there's one person at the table. They're ruining your fun as the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else kind of accepts them because, again, they're funny or they bring the beer, whatever it is. Not to do with their gaming ability. Everybody pretty much agrees they're not a good fit for the game, but they have some other quality that everybody else is willing to overlook their bad fit for the game for. But you're the GM and you're not. Like, now what's your behavior? Do you simply walk away? Or do you say, either they go or I go? And do you have that right?
As the GM, it is my table.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever that table might actually be, it is my table. And as the GM, it is my responsibility to make sure everybody is having as much fun as they can have. And that includes me.
Right.
So, if I'm not having a good time and it's down to one person at the table that everybody else seems to be okay with, then I need to have a conversation with everybody. Not all at once, probably, but individually. Just say, okay, here's where I'm at. I'm kind of not enjoying the game because, this and this and this, whatever. I'm not really enjoying running the game. What do you guys think? What do you think we should do? What would you like to do? That kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And if it turns out that everybody really is okay with that person, then you have to think about whether it's worth changing,
Yeah.
Changing out of the game and going to do build some other group or whatever. And I know it's hard to build a group. Believe me, I know. I live in the gaming desert.
Yeah. Yeah, though I know your particular circumstance, where you are makes it very difficult, but I am going to say that in general it is easier for a GM than a player to build a group.
Yes, in general.
In general.
Yeah. But again, I refuse to spend what should be my enjoyment time not enjoying it.
Right.
And if that means I'm the one that has to go, then I'm the one that has to go. Mm-hmm. Now, if I like these guys and I'm really having a problem with just one guy and they're all okay with it, then I might put some effort into trying to find them a GM that fits with them better. Mm-hmm. But if I can't...
Wow, that's actually more magnanimous than I would ever be. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, we're done. See ya.
Yeah.
Sorry, it didn't work out.
But I will also tell you this, okay? I've had this situation come up before.
Yeah.
One guy who brought all the snacks and all this other kind of stuff, but he was really, really crap at the game. Okay? I mean, he messed things up for me like you wouldn't believe and just made me miserable most of the time. And I had this conversation with my players. Mm-hmm. About what, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling, this is what is okay, this is what is not okay, and what do you guys think we should do? And they said, well, you know what, we want to keep playing, we want you as the GM, so we're going to ask him to leave.
Did they do it? So you didn't even have to be,
they did it. They were like, no, we'll take care of that, because we want to keep playing.
Man.
Man,
that's great.
Yeah. So that's how that went. I mean, okay, fair enough, right? Sometimes you need to have the conversation, right? But sometimes you get results out of that conversation that you didn't expect, mm-hmm. and that are actually helpful. You find out that while this guy might be okay and he might be kind of amusing or fun to hang around with or whatever, but he's really messing something up in the game with either as a player or a GM, you might discover that if you have the conversation that you are how do I word this without sounding snooty? You are more valuable to that group than he is, or she is, or whatever. So I would definitely lean towards having the conversation, even if you're just like one player and you're the only one who seems like you're not having a good time, or you're having a problem with somebody. You're the only one that seems that way. I would still have the conversation. I would start with the GM and go, look, I'm kind of having a problem here.
Right.
And just explain. See, this is my contention is that people are really mostly really bad at communicating.
Well, that is what all of this comes down to, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
What we're really talking about, again, I'm going to say it, is we're just talking about basic social skills here.
Yeah.
This is just how you deal with groups. And people are bad at it.
I don't think it's near as much as you're afraid to do something, or you're afraid of, you're afraid of the outcome so much as you're afraid of actually having the conversation. To my mind, that is what you definitely need to do, is have the conversation.
Right.
Okay. And it doesn't, I mean, it could be a minor thing. You might just be annoyed about the way he sharpens his pencils. Now that seems pretty goofy and trivial and all that kind of stuff. But it's much better to say something, to explain how you're feeling and why, than it is to sit there and stew about the way he or she sharpens their pencils and then gradually build on that until it becomes such a big tragedy with all the other minor infractions they have, whatever, that you build it up to a point where you actually resent the other person.
Yeah, you know what? I actually have a personal experience here for this.
Okay.
Because I am extremely sensitive to eating noises, mouth noises. They drive me crazy. Like some people, if you rub styrofoam together, it like makes them cringe.
Right.
Or like the glass beads rubbing together, or it's like a nails on chalkboard thing. That's it for me. I cannot, if I can hear you eating and you are not making an effort to like keep your mouth closed or not talk with your mouth full, it drives me bonkers. And it's something that I've never been able to get over. I mean, obviously in public, I've never punched someone over it or anything like that. And I'm in a restaurant, I wouldn't attack someone.
Right.
But I did finally have to have a conversation with one of my gaming groups, because they liked to have snacks at the table. And at least one of them was let's just call them a loud eater.
Okay. And
that was a really awkward conversation, because it seems like something that you should just be able to get over. You know what I mean? And that comes down to the whole agreeableness thing again. It's like, well, this is my issue. I should be able to just get past it. It seems like such a trivial thing, but it does drive you crazy. So yeah, and that was it. And ultimately, I mean, it resolved itself better than I thought it would. It's all I can say.
See, that's the thing. It often does, because the other person is not aware all the time,
right,
of what might be causing offense. And sometimes if you just point it out, you say, hey, look, maybe sharpen your pencils differently. Obviously, I'm picking pencils because it's very trivial and there's no baggage with it. Okay. Maybe sharpen your pencils differently, because the way you're doing it now, I don't know why. I can't really explain it, but it's really causing a problem for me. I feel bad about the way you're sharpening your pencils.
Right.
Whatever.
Well, the other thing too, and this is an important part of it, is also how you approach that topic.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you come at it in a combative or accusatory way, you're going to make the person defensive. If you go like, listen, do you look, I know we all need pencils. Do you really have to sharpen your pencils like that? It drives me bonkers. That's a confrontational way to do it. That's an aggressive way to do it. That's inviting a fight.
Yeah.
If you make it, in fact, usually it's best to make yourself the bad guy in this and say, listen, I know I have this foible and I know it's weird, But when you sharpen your pencils at the table like that in the pencil sharpener, and you can grind the way you grind the pencil, it's like it just gets to me in a way that I can't tune out. And I've always been this way, and I realize it's an inconvenience. But would you mind for me going away from the table to sharpen your pencils? To make it so that it's less about what they're doing to hurt you and more that, that you understand that you are also part of the issue. That you're willing to take on some of the, hey, I know this is between us, not this. That's what it is. This is not something you're doing to me. This is something that is happening between us through no fault of either of us.
Right.
Right? That's ultimately the approach.
Even if that is an absolute lie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying tell the truth.
Yeah. Even if it's an absolute lie, start from there.
Right. That's assuming that the goal is really to keep the peace and get along.
Right. If your goal is to resolve the issue in a way that does not mean that anybody has to go away hurt.
Right.
Okay. Then that's your approach. And really it's like, this is a thing that is happening. This is how I feel about that thing. Can we come to an agreement about how to deal with that thing? Then, if you have somebody who will not do that or cannot do that, then you don't have a bad player, really. You have a bad person.
Right. And that's really what this comes down to, isn't this? Is it's not that there's bad players. There are people who are bad people.
Yes.
I mean, insofar as, not getting along with other people playing a role-playing game is bad people.
You're bad at being people.
Because that if they don't get along with the other players at the role-playing game, they're also, selling crack and running over school children with their cars and stuff.
Right. There you go. That's exactly it. Because you roll your dice funny, you're a mass murderer.
Right, obviously.
Okay, we got there.
Did we fix all the problems in the world with this?
Almost.
Yeah, that's good.
No joke. I'll bet you if people paid more attention to it would fix a bunch of problems. But hey, I'm not saying nothing about nothing. Nothing about nothing.
With the whole thing of being willing to take some of the blame even when you know you're blameless, that's hard for people to do because, one of the biggest things that we're afraid of is blame, is being responsible for something, and on top of that, there's also, you have to be willing to assume the other person is doing what they're doing with no malice at all.
Right.
It's
and that is important. It's you have to go in with an attitude of, for now, this is not personal.
Right.
They are not deliberately making this happen.
After you tell them about it, if it continues, then it is somewhat personal. Because at the very least, they are saying that your feelings in this do not matter to them.
Right. But the thing to realize is once you've had that conversation where you explain what's going on, how you feel about it, and ask for a compromise, once a compromise of some sort has been agreed upon by both parties, and that behavior or activity continues, you may then rest quietly in the knowledge that it is their problem and not yours.
Right.
That's how this goes. All right. You realize, oh, they're continuing to do it or act however they're acting or whatever. Even though we agreed that we would do something different, then that's their problem. I no longer have responsibility for their problem.
Though, since we're basically giving everybody life advice at this point.
Yes, I know.
The one thing I want to throw in here is, after the compromise is reached, whatever it is on whatever the issue is, you also do have to make allowances for the fact that people screw up sometimes. It's like the guy might forget and sharpen his pencil one time at the table. And if you then make a big deal about it, you are opening a confrontation.
Right.
Like those things will happen. People do forget because people are creatures of habit too. And asking someone to break a habit can be much more difficult than you think it is.
Right.
So you have to make allowances for that. In fact, there have to be a certain number of screw ups that you do not even comment on.
Oh yeah.
You know?
It's about consistent behavior. If it's consistently happening, then, you know.
Yeah, well, then you go over to them and
Speak
say,
up.
hey, you know, we talked about this and you said you were cool with sharpening your pencil over there. And I guess, oh my God, you're right. I totally forgot. Do me a favor. If I do it again, remind me at the table. Because I forgot. And then you're like, oh, okay, you're a good person.
Yeah. Again, another compromise.
Right. But again, I've seen resolutions like that where the players come to an agreement and then somebody screws up. And then it is immediately, you know, well, you know, you violated the treaty. Now we're going to nuke you. It's like,
right.
Whoa, you know, you know, you have to continue to assume no malice.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because the minute you stop doing that, then you also become a problem.
Right.
All right. And nobody wants to do that.
You don't want to be a problem, especially not at my table. And clearly, especially not at your table, because you have no problem just showing someone the door.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's my table. I own it. I will take it home.
I can't wait till I have a table big enough that I can have in a room, or a table in a room big enough again that I can have people sitting around the table that I can tell, you know, it's my table, my rules.
A door that is far enough away you actually have to show it to them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I want to show you the door, but everybody got to get up so that you can get over there.
Yeah. All right. What other psychology tips should we give? Is that a thing we do now? Apparently, I don't know. We are neither of us licensed psychologists or human behavior specialists. We've learned the hard way, and someday we will tell you all about all the hard ways. But that day is not today, because we're out of time.